Welcome to Enlightened, the enlightened journey of life. I am your host, Jen Hamilton, and it is an honor to have you here. I am a conscious life coach and women's empowerment mentor, and I activate a potent level of self and soul inquiry with my clients, which initiates deep and lasting transformation in all areas of their lives. I am here for the full human experience, authentically and audaciously sharing my magic with the world. On this podcast, we're all about mastering life on the way to enlightenment. And as we are here having a human experience, we might as well embrace it all. We play in the space of what is real and tangible, just as much as we play in the space of esoteric and metaphysical. You'll be ignited by deep conversation, whether through my own personal musings, interviews with incredible thought leaders around the world, and everyday divine humans sharing their soulful stories. Thank you for being on this journey. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful soul. Just to let you know that listener discretion is advised for this episode and to be mindful if there are kids around, as it contains adult themes. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of the Enlightened podcast. And today I am joined by Landy Peek. So Landy is a somatic coach, and she helps women get into their body's wisdom and release stored trauma. And I'm so fascinated by the work that you do, Landy. So I'd love for you to say in your own words a little bit about the work that you do, the type of people that come to you, and how you make a difference in the world.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And thanks for having me. I have kind of background. I'm an occupational therapist by trade, which really got me interested in the work in trauma. And as I kind of dove deeper, I found somatic experiencing and just loved how it helps us get in tune with our body, because so many of us are up in our heads all day long and we ignore what's going on inside of our bodies. And our bodies do kind of keep track of all of our experiences, all of the times that we were shut down, that we were made to feel not enough, the times that we actually did have big trauma. All of those experiences are kind of laid down in our body system. So as I started working with the trauma, I found really the key was coming back to the body and helping the body share its story and repattern the beliefs that were created from those experiences. And when I'm talking trauma, it can be big trauma that we're thinking, oh my gosh, that was huge and very traumatic in my life, to the little things, the little T traumas that are the things that, like being, having a teacher tell you that you're not good at math, which then takes you into your self-belief of I'm not good at math. And then for the rest of your life, you're not good at math. No matter if your brain can actually do the math, it's your belief. And so we come back to that inner belief and how the inner beliefs that are often laid as children now impact who we are and what we can create in our life now. So that's who I work with, is the women that are really in those transformational times that want to step into this new life, but are finding the patterns that are keeping them stuck. The beliefs of I'm not good enough, the beliefs that everyone will leave me if I actually step into my own big energy. And so I help a lot of those women really kind of shift and start recreating what we believe inside so we can create the outer world that we want. And it's really fun and powerful to kind of step into that inner thought world that we have.
I love it. You're absolutely speaking my language. And it's so true, isn't it? Like the body keeps count of everything. And these experiences that we have, growing up as children, teenage years moving into adulthood, everything is stored in the subconscious mind and in the body, and can later, like we might have something going on in our lives and we have no clue what it is, but our body has remembered it, as you were saying, it's gone in and it's stored it. I'm super curious. So you mentioned that you're an OT, like how did you move? Were you sort of clinical OT and then you moved into this work? What was the transition like for you?
Yeah. So I started out actually as a pediatric OT. So I worked with kiddos in school districts and early intervention, working with the 0 to 3 in private practice. And as I kind of went through my career, it wasn't until I had kids myself that I'm like, ooh, there's something here. And I experienced a traumatic birth with my first, and that kind of started into, okay, I've got to figure out how to start helping myself, because I lived in a rural community. There wasn't a lot of resources, and I had the ability to take all the classes and figure it out. And as I started doing that, I was like, oh, there's something here. There's something that is deeper. So resolving my own birth trauma, but then it was like, oh, wait, there's some childhood stuff here that I can also like work on. Like my biggest thing and kind of those inner beliefs was I was told so often I was a quiet child. Oh my gosh, you're so quiet. I was teased about being quiet. So as an entrepreneur trying to get out and speak to the world, I couldn't do it. And so I would self-sabotage. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to sign up for podcasts. And then I'd chicken out, or I'd, have other ideas of ways that I could get out there. I'd sit behind the screen, just put up posts with never a voice. And so it wasn't until I shifted that inner belief of I'm quiet that I could actually start to share a message and really get out and talk. So it's things like that was like, ooh, this is cool inside myself. And then I started just having practitioners that I was working with say, can you help me with that? And I started shifting from actual therapy practice to coaching, because I started coaching peers, and then it just started naturally rolling in. And then I started just shifting into coaching women, who most of my clients are business women or entrepreneurs, are women, because we're pushing the boundaries in our thoughts and in the way and the things that we're doing. So those kind of go-getter women that are out there pushing those boundaries and also figuring out where their own blocks are. It's when you hit those blocks, that's when I come around. So I've hit all the blocks. I've walked the walk. I've done the talk. And now I'm helping others, and I'm continuing to do my own work. It's not like it's done, because each new level that I grow is like, oh my gosh, I thought I resolved that, but here it is again. And we work at it at a deeper level.
I love that so much. And, one of the things that I learned through my hypnotherapy training as well, working with those deep subconscious thoughts is, the experiences that we have as children, when we receive that validation, when we've had confirmation that we're right about something, or when we're praised for something. So in your case, being told, oh, you're the quiet one. And it's like, if it's been praised, like, oh, if someone said to your mum, for example, oh, Landy's just so quiet. What a good child. What a good girl. We want to be the good one. We want to be right, because it means we're not reprimanded. We find safety in being right. We find safety in being praised and validated, and we don't want to be extradited for doing the wrong thing. And so isn't that interesting? Because I love that you work with women somatically in this space, because I very much work with the subconscious mind. But it's true, because the body does keep count of all these things as well, and we store it in different areas of our body. And and I'd love to hear through your experience, through coaching and doing all of the work, how does it present in the body for people? How do people know they've even got stuck trauma, if they don't even know what it is, but they know that there's perhaps something going on? Like when people get to you, do they generally have an awareness of what's going on, or are they like, I don't know what it is, but I know that there's something?
Yeah. So at the coaching level, people know that I'm working with high level women who know that there's something there. They've been working and doing a lot of their own self work. And so they have like, oh, I'm stuck. I have this feeling. I just don't know what it is. I can't get to whatever goal I'm trying to get. I have this block, and I hear those words, I'm stuck and I have this block, or I'm really just pivoting in a big way and I'm creating a new identity. Those are kind of the three big things that I hear in the clients that are coming to me. The way that we're kind of tapping in somatically is listening to what the body is saying. So if you're going from my shy, unable to talk, I would think about doing a podcast and my stomach would just clench, and I could feel that in the pit of my stomach. And it was just like, oh, it's so yucky. I can't do this. So instead of kind of backing away from that body sense, it's getting curious. And it's what I love about the work is it doesn't have to be an icky feeling working with trauma. It is working around ooh, let's get curious about that. What is that feeling? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it have words that are coming with it? Does it have a picture? Does it have a story that's behind it? And as we just go sit by that big yucky stomach that's coming in, we start to get curious. And it's not scary in sitting there. It's like, okay, I'm sitting beside it. What happens when I'm sitting beside it? Ooh, it starts to relax a little bit. Oh, and then as they start going in, yeah, it's purple. It's kind of round and blobby. Oh, wait, there's some fear there. There's some grief there. And then we go a little bit deeper. Is there a story? And often comes in, oh yeah, I remember in the 8th grade, I went and I spoke in front of, my whole class for that presentation, and they laughed, and I was never going to speak again. And it's those stories that it doesn't feel like a big trauma thing when you're looking back at it. But when you're sitting with what the body felt and it completely shut you down, then it's like, oh, okay. So then we go into, what did you need in that moment? And sometimes, we put on freeze. And I always think of like, and it ages me, the Zach with Saved by the Bell, where he's like, freeze the world. Then he does his little monologue. That's kind of sometimes what we do, is like freeze that world. And then what did you need? Oh, I needed my best friend to come stand beside me. I needed to understand they weren't laughing at me. They were laughing at what that one kid did in the audience. And I had no idea that went on. It's figuring out, because in that sense, when we kind of pause and are able to sit with that time, sometimes we pick up more information than when we realize was happening. And sometimes it's just, oh, wait, I needed extra support to come in. Let's bring that in. And sometimes it's even rewriting the story. And when we rewrite that story, the old story is still there. We're not erasing memories, but we bring in that new story with support and empowerment, and our emotions start attaching to that new story. Yes, you can remember all the details, but it doesn't have that power and that trigger anymore. And it's like, oh yeah, okay. And then we can go and move on. And sometimes it's even having our adult self go back and talk to our younger self and bring in that support. And it's really fun to see all of the different ways that we can bring in that support that you needed, rewrite the story if that needs to happen, and be able to release that so you can shift in and be like, oh, that no longer aligns with me. That belief isn't mine. It's now just a belief that's there, but I can move into this new identity that's the new me.
I love it so much. And it's funny because we do such similar work, and it is so needed. And we didn't have, the resources, that we have today to do this work, generations ago. I speak to my mum often because my mum's a counselor, and she works in drug and alcohol counseling. And so we'll often chat about, things that I experienced through coaching and mentoring, and things that she experiences as a counselor. And, just sort of looking at the different modalities that we do. And, she can take away a lot from the stuff that, I talk about, and I can take away from what she talks about as well. And, if these modalities had been around generations ago, I think the world would have looked very different. But I think we're so blessed in this day and age to not only be able to do the work on ourselves, but this is where we start to create the impact that not only changes the world, but changes for our children. You were saying that, this sort of came about for you when you had your little one, and it changes us as women and mothers and humans, doesn't it? We want to be able to create a difference in the world, and even if that's just through our children.
Absolutely. And one of, I think, the biggest ways I have identified self inner talk that's not serving me is as I'm parenting my kiddos. So I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And especially with my daughter, because I see a lot of similarities in younger me and her. But things that come out of my mouth in parenting, and I'm like, I don't believe that anymore. But that is definitely a generational thing that has come through. And having to reparent myself in, ooh, I don't believe that. I don't align with that. That just came out in a moment of stress. And doing a lot more repair work with my daughter. And I think repair work is so amazing in building those relationships, because we're human. We're going to snap at our kids. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have fights with our spouses. But when we come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, this is what happened and I own it, and what can we do to kind of repair that? that is some of the biggest, most magical work. But it takes the awareness before to say, oh, that was my thing. That wasn't her thing. It had nothing to do with her. That was, I got in trouble for that as a kid. So now I reacted or overreacted to what happened when it really didn't need that response. So I can apologize, I can own it, and then we can move on. But the cool thing is I hear my kids do it too. So when they make a mistake, they own it, they apologize, and they have stronger relationships together. But I hear it in those friend relationships too. And so we are changing generations because we're having healthier, emotionally healthier kids going forward because we just have more awareness and we're getting support. And a lot of what I do too is that generational healing, because sometimes we have generational trauma that has come down the line that I'm sitting with something and it's like, this isn't mine. Or I sit with a client, I'm like, is that yours? And it's like, no, that's somebody else's trauma that we have just been passed down because they had fear of judgment, fear of abandonment, that then got passed down to us. Then we hopefully don't pass down to our kids. We can change that. But absolutely, our biggest thing is changing the world and making it better for the future.
I love it so much. And it's interesting because I've got a daughter who's 8 and my son who is 6. So they're just a year older than yours. And one of the things that my daughter got I think it was for Christmas. That's right. It was her brother gave it to her. It's called, I don't know if you guys have them there. They're called Sylvanian bunnies. It's like this little collectible set of little rabbits, and they come with tree houses and cars and stuff. They're very cute. We've got a little puppy, Archie. And he got a hold of one of these little toy bunnies the other day and just chewed a tiny little bit of this little bunny. You could barely tell, but she could notice. And she was devastated. I really just felt for her because I think it was left somewhere and the dog got it. And it was we're having these conversations about what it's like to have a puppy. And she was really, really devastated. She's like, I just want to put it in the bin. And I said to her, darling, what about just now understanding that this little bunny just needs some extra love from you? What if it's just, now that even if it's broken or now that's, a little bit damaged, it just needs extra love from you. And she really sat with it and really, really felt with it. And she's quite an in-tune kid as well, which is amazing. And she was like, okay, yep, I can just love it extra. And something else happened with another toy a couple of days later or something like that. I think the dog had got a hold of something and she's like, I just need to love it a little bit more, and so it lands, so instantly for children. It just does. And if she's having, a little something with her brother, she might say something that she's picked up from me that's, she might use her boundaries. I don't appreciate that. And this, we can create change for them, based on our experiences. And it's really beautiful to witness because, at such a young age, they're still in the imprinting age. My daughter's just out of it now that she's just over 7, but, really everything's starting to solidify for her and her beliefs about the world. And so it's beautiful to see that she's been able to adapt these, these ways of thinking and these ways of being in her behavioral patterns that, hopefully will last with her and that we will see a change. I've seen the way she interacts with some of her friends, which is, it's really, really beautiful to see. I remember the first day she went to a new kindergarten quite a few years ago. And it was so funny. I went to pick her up in the afternoon and the educator pulled me inside and said, oh, by the way, your daughter was really sweet. We played some music and she said to the other kids, now just close your eyes and feel the music in your body. And I was like, yep, that's my girl. Awesome. So the way she, she picks up on things, and I mean, obviously, having a mum as a coach, it's, it's either a blessing or a curse. I'll tell you in 20 years if she's in therapy because of it. But it's beautiful because, we go through gratitude practices and we have what's called a happy sandwich. So we talk about what was good about our day, what was not so good, and then we close it with another good thing. We do gratitude. We do acknowledgements of everyone else in the family. We say, where is there room for growth? in our lives, you know. And my little one, he's still getting his head around it, and he's like there's room for growth in sharing, and it's really beautiful. And then we hold an intention for the next day as well. And so it's, you know, setting our children up to have these different ways of thinking, which, you know, I kind of had that, you know, with my mum growing up. She was very much like, you know, what was a good thing about your day, and we'd have to share about that. And it was like, oh, mum, not this again, you know. But I realized now how important that actually is. And I'm so grateful for her. I know that she'll be listening to this. So thanks, Mum. What are some of the things that you do with your children to really help them, you know, embody this frame of mind?
Yeah, similar. We talk about gratitude. We, you know, every night we're looking at, you know, what is something that has gone well in your day, and what is something that is a challenge in your day. And we also do that sandwich. And I love the term sandwich, but it's looking at, okay, what went well, what was exciting and good, and then what is something that, you know, was a challenge or a struggle. And then what is something, again, that was just really fun and positive. And so we're looking at that kind of balance in seeing that there are things that are struggles and there are things that are really good. And a lot of times we get focused on the struggle, but if we can come back to that good, that is something that is huge. So really looking at that, and then looking at those I am statements. And it is so huge in how we're self-identifying, but listening to, you know, my kiddos and how they describe themselves. But the I am smart, I am, you know, whatever, strong, athletic, whatever is coming out of their mouth. If I hear something that's like, oh, I don't love that, we can talk about where that came from. And often it's coming from somebody said something at school, and then we can shift it and really work at it at the root instead of letting it be this big, full-fledged I am that we take on for life that is not a happy thing. And life doesn't have to be happy. We talk a lot about emotions and being able to just sit with emotions and how emotions aren't scary. One of the biggest things I sit with my kids, especially in the tantruming stage, and luckily we're pretty much past that, but those big tantrums that came out as toddlers where I'm not afraid of this. And I remember my little guy being like, okay, like he is melting down and like, Mom's sitting here, I'm not afraid of this big, and we call them, you know, volcanoes or big waves. You know, I'm not afraid of this. This is just emotion. It is just coming out. It's just a thing. It's not something that's scary. And it became where it's like, okay, I can ride these emotions, because a lot of our upbringings, emotions were scary. We couldn't show big anger. We couldn't show big grief. And so, you know, and sometimes we can't even show big happiness. Those big things we're not okay with a lot of the women that I work with. And sometimes it's just one or two that we're not okay. So it's like, can I just sit with this and just let this explode and see, like, I'm okay, you're not hurting anybody. It's just this big volcanic emotion that's exploding. And so really talking about emotions are okay and we can feel. And then trying to like understand other people's sides. And my little guy's a little for it, but my daughter starts to get that empathy where it's just like, okay, you know, something happened. It wasn't just against me, but what could have been their side of the story too. So there's lots of just talking about, you know, and going back into the body, what their body sensations are, really cueing into, ooh, that person doesn't make me feel good. Or that situation makes me feel like my stomach feels yucky. Let's get curious about that. Let's not just write it off.
I love it so much. And I've experienced such similar things with my kids, because we talk about, having big feelings. And, you know, there's been times, you know, very sort of typical school stuff that happens, especially for my daughter. And, you know, they form like their little cliquey groups very, very early on in school. And so she's moved through that a few times. And this person's not talking to me. This person's not playing with me. This person sat with the other person. And, you know, she might have a big personal feeling about it, but now she's at the age where she can start to hold that empathy for another. And, you know, I'll say, well, you know, perhaps there's something going on in this other person's life that they're feeling maybe a little bit unsettled, or maybe they're not feeling as safe in this situation. You know, how can you, you know, maybe see from their point of view how they're feeling through this. And she owns, and she'd be like, I was actually really mean to them today.
Mm-hmm.
I was feeling really sad, and I raised my voice at them, and we talk about apologizing and,
Mm-hmm.
working through things. And I mean, the poor kid, her dad is Serbian and I'm half Italian. Like, she's going to have a streak of anger in there.
It's just going to be there. Yeah.
It's just going to be there. So we'll just teach you how to work with that. I'd love to hear some of your, like, something that you've worked through yourself personally that has had such an impact on your life. So perhaps something that you experienced growing up or through childhood or through your teen years that now you've been able to embody this work that has created such epic change in your life.
Yeah, there's so many. It's like, I think a huge part of kind of this work is you dive deeper and deeper. And the more that you see, the more they're like, ooh, I can work with that too. Ooh, this was a big belief that I held. So I'll start with the shy one because that's kind of the big one that's coming up. And then I can go into motherhood as well and how that has shifted as I'm seeing the beliefs, and this is the current one, as I'm seeing the beliefs in what I believe is an ideal mother, a good mother, how it doesn't necessarily align with reality. So with being shy, I was praised for being quiet because my parents worked. And a lot of my dad had his own, he's a veterinarian, had his own practice. And I would hang out in the back a lot. So being quiet was something that my parents didn't want me to disturb their clients. It wasn't something that was purposely, oh, you should be quiet. You have to be, not seen, not heard, but it was really be respectful in the business. But that's not what my little brain took. It was really, I shouldn't be heard. I need to be just quiet, silent, not seen. And so it was something that really carried through my entire childhood into college, where I was, very quiet, did not like being out in this spotlight at all. And so it was a struggle. And it wasn't until I started really trying to do my own thing and pushing into that entrepreneur world did I realize this was such a big thing. And so I started working through those beliefs of like, why is this, getting curious, why is this a big thing? What is the story behind that? And as I kind of dove deeper to what's this story, I can come back to that one. And I was probably 3 or 4 in the back of my dad's practice. And my sister and I had been fighting. And it was just like, mom was upset. We were, fighting in a public place. And so that kind of, I stepped out. I was not what I should be. And I got in trouble. And it was a typical parenting thing. It wasn't anything that was that big, but to my little brain, this was huge. I had let down my family because I had been very loud. And so that was this little brains has been tying on to my little self image right there. And so I had to come back and say, okay, what needed to happen in that moment? I needed to understand it was just a one-time, hey, you can't be loud back here. It wasn't, I let my whole family down. And like in my little brain, as I pieced out the story, like my dad's whole practice was going to go down, the tubes. Nobody was going to come see him. I mean, it wasn't reality that this little kid's upset was going to have that much power, but that's the power that I gave it. And so it was coming back, and I had my adult self come back to my little self and just be able to sit down and explain, like, it's okay. It was a mistake. Nobody is really mad other than the like, stop this. There wasn't anger continued. So it's like, oh, this is just one thing. And this did not impact, and having to be kind of shown, it didn't impact my dad's business in any way, shape, or form. But I grew up then with that sense from that one little piece story to if I did anything in my childhood, teenage years, everyone was watching and it would destroy my dad's business. And that's a lot of weight for a little kid to hold is like, I have the power to destroy a business. Like I don't, like I grew up in a small town. Everybody knew me. There's lots of small town businesses. Nobody else was looking at and saying, ooh, if she did something bad, we're never going to work with her dad. That wasn't reality, but I had to be shown and kind of re-taught and shift those inner beliefs that I didn't have that much power, that it wasn't a big deal. Once I shifted that, I could step out in a whole new way and not worry about, oh, everything that I do is being watched. Everything that I do has that much power. It's like, oh, no, I'm human and nobody's really paying that much attention to me. And nobody really cares if I make a mistake. So kind of coming there, and then I could step out in entrepreneurial world. So that's kind of finishing that one. As a mom, the big beliefs were really in the rules. And I found like my family was very much structured in rules. And so when rules were broken, and as a parent, there's things like, oh, I'm not doing that with my kid. But then it would come up when I wouldn't do it with her. And then it'd be like, so let me come up with being on time is a huge one where we had to be on time. It was a big thing in my family. And I'm like, we don't have to be on time. We're going to chill out. It's fine. And then would come the actual time deadline. And I would feel the anxiety rising in my body. And it's like getting ready for school. I'm like, it's not a huge deal if we're late. I walk her to the front door and, have to walk her in instead of just dropping her off the playground. It's not a huge deal. But the anxiety would start creeping in, even if the conscious brain is like, it's fine. Like, we have time. It's fine. The anxiety would come. And so it started getting curious about like, oh my gosh, my stomach is tightening so much here. I can feel this, like, what's going to happen? And getting curious about like, okay, I feel the sense. What is going to happen? What's the worst that's going to happen? And it's like, well, the world is going to come to an end. I'm like, really? Is the world really going to come to an end if I'm late? So then working on those beliefs and then testing them. Okay, we're late one day. What happened? Well, nothing. We walked in the front door. Nobody even cared. She didn't even get a tardy. So it's like, it's okay. But sometimes we have to go into like, instead of going up with that anxiety, coming and getting curious about, okay, what's that body sensation? What's the belief behind it? Can we shift the belief and then test it? And oh, wait, the world didn't end. But our little brains make things catastrophic when they're really not.
It's so interesting, isn't it? And just listening to you speak, like we've got so many similarities and crossovers in our lives. And I experience this so much, stepping into motherhood as well and having to do things the right way. Having to do things the way the book said, or the child health nurse said, or the doctor said, or whatever. And there was a lot of things that I, intuitively said, this doesn't align with me. I don't want to do it this way. I don't like it this way. And, I guess sort of, the backlash that you receive because of it, because you've got a different way of doing things, or that you're just genuinely not aligned to doing something a certain way. I remember there was like, because my daughter's 8, and there was all like the debate around when to start children on solids. Was it 4 months or was it 6 months? It was kind of like a big deal here. And, the research that I had looked into was that, 6 months is best, for their gut health. And because I was breastfeeding as well. And the doctor's like, no, it's changed to 4 months. You have to start at 4 months. And I'm like, but how up to date is your research? I've looked into this other stuff, and I didn't start her. And I think I even lied to the doctor a few times, because then there was the talk of putting them on cow's milk. And I'm like, well, I don't want to give them cow's milk because I'm still giving them breast milk at 18 months old. And, just all the things that you feel, especially as a new mother, there's just so much stuff to learn, like, because all you want to do is just take care of this precious little potato that you gave birth to. You don't know, you have got no clue of what to do. And there's so much information out there. There's so much out there, and it's just about, it's so hard to have discernment when you're absolutely exhausted as well, and then you question your own sanity. And at the end of the day, I had pretty bad postnatal depression and postnatal anxiety. And through that, I got to a point where I was just like, fuck it. I just need to do it my own way. I need to just listen to myself, listen to my own intuition, and, take people's, opinions or, unsolicited advice, with a grain of salt. It's just one of those things. And you can duplicate that in other areas of your life as well. You would know through your experience as an entrepreneur, a business owner. Oh my gosh, there's so much information out there. I feel like I feel like phases that we move through, you know, as humans, but also, you know, as women, you know, we go through that motherhood phase. And then if we're stepping into the space of business, you know, going through the same, you know, journey as an entrepreneur, where there's just all of the information and all of the coaches saying this, do that, you know, 6 figures, 7 figures, that, don't do this, marketing experts, that, like it's so noisy.
It is. It is incredibly noisy. And you and I parallel so much. I breastfed my baby. We were late for solids because, like, here we are. You know, and I did things differently with my kiddos, but it wasn't easy. And I came to the same fuck it like situation where it's just like, I can't take any more of the advice. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. And it was really tuning in to, okay, what is my intuition saying? What do I need to do to parent this child? I get all of the books, but what can I do to parent this child? And it's the same with anything in our life and our business is, what do I need to do that feels good and right for me? I don't have to do an Instagram post every day. I don't have to be on TikTok. I don't have to do this. Those don't light me up. Those don't feel good. What does feel good? What is a way that I can get out and talk and share that feels aligned with me and feels good? But it also has this, and motherhood too, has that fear, and it's the fear of judgment, and it's the fear of other people rejecting us.
Massively.
And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. I think those are our 2 biggest fears, and not being good enough. And I think that comes down to, they're going to reject us. They're going to judge us because we're not good enough. And so if you look at, like, those are our big stemming fears, and you apply them to, like, what is the reason I'm pushing so hard around, you know, being the best mom? It's because fear. I don't want to let my daughter down. This is incredible little being that has, like, no power and control. But also the fear of, like, okay, so what is my grandmother going to say? What is my mother going to say? What is my sister going to say? What is my best friend going to say? And they're all going to have something to say that's different. So I'm going to let somebody down. Somebody's going to say, I'm not good enough because I didn't put rice in my baby's bottle at 4 months. And it's like, holy moly. And the same thing when we're in business. We have all of those fears that come in. And if I don't do the right marketing, if I don't do the right social media, if I don't do the right, somebody's going to reject me. Somebody's going to say I'm not good enough. And my whole business is going to, you know, collapse. And I'm never going to be able to work with anyone. And it's when we get into these big fears that we start getting stuck, that we start losing the ability to really function well. And we have to come back and say, okay, what's behind this fear? Some of it is that internal safety, because our brain wants us to keep safe. Our brain does not want us to step out of bounds, because if we step out of bounds and push those boundaries in society, maybe the social pack will, you know, just own us. And then maybe the, you know, saber-toothed tiger is going to eat us. Our brains kind of think in those big ways. But if we can come down and say, oh, wait, this really isn't one of those life and death situations. If I have people that, you know, unsubscribe from my email list, I'm not going to die. Nothing's going to eat me. It's totally okay. But we have to come back to those inner fears and be like, oh, it's okay. You know what? I make judgments and choices all the time too. I unsubscribe too. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It could just be they're clearing up their email and and I have one client that she has been working with me for 3 years, and anytime she gets something new and she has to subscribe, she unsubscribes right away. And it was like one of my big ahas as I'm looking at it. I'm like, you don't subscribe to my email. She's like, no, I don't subscribe to anybody's email. It junks things up. But she still works with me. So that is not you have to be on my email list to still be a client. And it was a huge pivot point where it's like, oh, I don't have to have that fear. It's okay. And so when we can come to the underneath, the like root cause of that fear, it's easy to start shifting the beliefs that the fear causes. And then we can start shifting who we are in our internal identity, be able to step into a bigger world. And that's the cool thing about coming back to really figuring out that subconscious and that body sense. Be like, okay, ultimately we want to be bigger, different people. How do we get there? What doesn't align anymore that we need to shift?
It's so true, isn't it? And this is why we do this work, so that we can get to a place where we can just check in with our intuition and not move from that place of fear, or that we, the fear of being judged, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of being worthless in another person's eyes. And it's so funny. I was talking to someone yesterday who's also in business. And I was saying, I used to have an app that used to tell me who my who the people that were unfollowed me on Instagram, or, weren't interacting, or this, that, and the other. And I would take it personally, years ago, like, oh my God, what did I say? Why did they unfollow me? Or, exactly the same thing. You look at the people that unsubscribe from your mailing list. It's like, what have I done? What have I said? And it's funny because when I was working with my business coach earlier in the year, she's like, you want people to unsubscribe. They take themselves out. That means you don't have to go through and clean them all up. If they're just not aligned to what you say, then that's okay. And I love that. Like I see it now. It's like, okay, well, my stuff is not for you, and that's okay. I wish you all the best. If people want to unfollow me on social media, because what also this app was showing me is, I thought actually there was a couple of friends, I was like close friends. I was like, I can't believe you unfollowed me. They're like, oh no, I've just deactivated my account. But it came up that they'd unfollowed me because it's like they don't exist on the platform anymore.
Right.
And so the story that I had came up with in my own mind, I was so creative. I was like, oh my gosh, they don't want to be my friend anymore. They don't like me. They don't like the work that I do. What have I done? Are they talking about me behind my back? I've never done anything to them. It was all story. And then because of the story, it then, triggers an emotional response, which triggers a physiological response in the body. My body is now having a reaction to this thought process. My body has already gone into fight, flight, or freeze mode in relation to this emotion and this feeling. So I've gone through this just whole cycle of, essentially spiraling down, making it the end of the world. And all they did was deactivate their Instagram account that had nothing to do with me. But I'd gone into such a stress state that, as you would know, when you go into that fight, flight, or freeze mode, you're not there to rest and digest. You're not there to just happily sit down and have a nice meal, and that your body absorbs all the nutrients of the food that you're eating, and you're not going to bed early and just enjoying the most beautiful, peaceful sleep. Your mind's ticking over. Your mind is going through every possible scenario it can. Your body's like, no, we need to eliminate all this food in a hurry. We need to, get ready to fight this thing, because it doesn't know the difference between the conversation that you had with this person in your head and what it actually exists.
Absolutely. Yes. And that fight, flight, or freeze response is a big one. And especially if we've had past traumas, it is more likely to be activated in a big way. And it also, in those past traumas, makes it less likely that we're going to have that flexibility in our system to be able to go, oh, wait, okay, I'm alert. This is something. Oh, wait, no, that's just a squirrel. That, twig that snapped is just a squirrel. It's not a big deal. And we can shift back down. Versus if we get activated in that, it's like, oh, what is that? What is that? I'm going to have to run, fight. What is the best response? And a lot of us are actually living in that fight, flight constantly. We don't downshift anymore into that rest and digest, into that being able to be flexible and really assess the situation. Everything feels like a threat. And that's where we start getting a lot of that anxiety coming, because everything feels like a threat. And it's really hard. And especially as moms, as we kind of swing back to that, I also suffered from postpartum anxiety, and it is such a huge thing because we have all of this information, we have all of this hormone, mix that's going on, and our bodies are all different. And we went into labor as a single human that could control everything in their environment and body, and out of the hospital, or I did a home birth. Coming out on the other side, when you have this little being that is completely dependent, and you can't even take a shower, you can't brush your teeth, you have a being that's crying, you have no control of your sleep, depending on how much support, you have no support, and it's 24/7. And then on top of that, you're trying to learn how to be a mom. You're trying to readjust to the body that you're living in, trying to readjust to this whole new role. And you add in a partner And that's readjusting that relationship. And you wonder why people are so much, so stressed as new moms. It's like, no wonder, there's so much there.
It's
And
so true. And you don't even
so
get your
huge.
body to yourself anymore. You
No.
literally have this, potato with arms and legs that's attached to your boobs every couple of hours, like it is non-stop. And honestly, probably the biggest traumatic experience of my life was becoming a mother, like the most beautiful. And I love being a mom.
Yes.
And I remember the kid's dad saying, oh, you changed after we had, our daughter. And I was like, yeah, I did. I absolutely did. Funny that. And people ask why we're not together. And so, it's going back and going, well, hang on a second. What is it that I need to comfort that version of me to move through? Yes. Where do I need to, whether it's sitting down through meditation, whether it's, through hypnosis, or even just writing a letter, or just sitting and being with that version that just needs some love and some comfort and just all the nourishment that they can get. So whether it's inner child, inner teen, new mum, yes, or new business owner, like it very much, there's so many similarities between falling pregnant and giving birth and becoming a mother as there is in business. It's just been probably one of the biggest reflections. You have this idea and you're putting all of the pieces together, which is like going through a pregnancy, and then you give birth to it, and that's all well and good, but then you've got to nurture it and take care of it, and you don't know what to do, and there's so many books out there, there's so many opinions, there's so many courses and online things that you can do for it. And and we can, definitely fumble our way through it. And it's funny, I have a friend of mine who is also in business and has been for quite some time, a little bit longer than I have. So she's been through the highs and the lows and the swings and the roundabouts a lot more. And we were chatting the other day, and she's like, I'm at the point where I'm firing my brand manager. I'm firing this person. They're saying to do it this way. It's not, it's not giving me a return. I'm fucking done with it doing this way. I'm just going to do it my way. I'm going to show up when I want to show up. I'm going to market how I want to market. And I think that really works for some people, like some people definitely. I know someone else who's been in business a very long time, and she loves structure. She thrives on structure. She thrives on having a team around her to do the bits and pieces and plans ahead. And it's so funny. And I'm so blessed, to have such polar opposite, friends in business. And you can take pieces from all over the place as well. I've got my business coach works from such a feminine space, and I love it. And, stepping into this year, we're going to be doing a lot more of the masculine stuff, so the structure and strategy and stuff, which I'm interested in now because I've done a lot of the feminine work in my business, a lot of the energetics, a lot of that, that somatic stuff, the subconscious stuff, like clearing all of the old belief systems, because I had it so deeply ingrained within me. Like my parents always were, they worked for someone else, and they always had, good jobs. And it was like, oh no, it's not safe to have a business, because in their view of the world, they, knew people that had businesses, whether it was friends or family, which had gone belly up or had not done so well, or they saw them working so hard. And it's like, well, I don't want that. So business must equal that. It's not safe to have a business. It's not safe to work for yourself because it's so unpredictable. And it's interesting because, having to rewrite my story on that, because growing up, seeing businesses of people around me not go so well, and that my parents were like, no, you have to work. You go and you get your weekly wage, and then they take your tax out, and then you get your 4 weeks annual leave, and they pay your superannuation and all of that. And then going, well, hang on a second, I want to break free of that old paradigm. I don't want to have to go and work for someone else until I'm 65 and then go on a pension and think that that's life. How can I create this in my own way? How can I have my own business? And then, going through, when I did a lot of my training in this space, modeling other people that I was learning from who had businesses which were, not thriving, being exposed, like working for other people whose businesses were completely falling apart at the seams, and they weren't barely holding it together, Yeah. And so it's like, oh, okay, well, if they look so successful on the outside, but, behind the scenes, it's actually really messy. that's what's going to happen to me. So I don't want that. And so we create this subconscious belief system, which then, has a response in the body as well. So when we think of, I can have a thriving business, my mind thinks, oh, that would be great. But my whole body contracts and says, no, not safe, abort mission, self-sabotage, do all of the things because this is not okay. And so it really is about bringing awareness to what that belief system is, bringing awareness to what is the conditions that essentially that we've been exposed to that says it's going to be this way. And as you would know, the beautiful part of our mind is that we have mind plasticity and that we can change our belief systems. We can change our thought processes. We can have a different experience, but we have to do the work to get there too,
Absolutely. We have to do the work. And, a lot of what I find with business women is that ability to receive support is a strong one, where I know for me, when I was first doing hiring, it was such a hard thing. Even hiring a VA for a few hours is like, ooh, but that belief in the self that I could receive the support because my family were doers. You went out and did it. You were the one that, you did the bootstraps on and up you go. And you didn't get help from others. And so it's like, ooh, as it was a big blocker in my business. As I grew, I realized I did need someone else to be doing some of that support, but I couldn't receive it. So I could never find the right person, or I'd find somebody and they'd quit, or I'd fire them, or, all of this, it would never work until I was able to shift that internal belief of receiving support. And it was the same with babysitters. Until I was able to receive that support, I could not find childcare, and it was blocking my business. And it was this all big thing of like, oh, okay, let's shift that internal belief. And now here's this most incredible babysitter that was, amazing. And I could leave my kids and I'd come back and they're like, oh, you're back? Like, you can go again. And it's like, that's beautiful because I have no guilt. And I could, bring in this VA that was incredible and in tuned and be like, we can work so well together. But it took me shifting those inner beliefs, and those come from the, existence, that childhood, those experiences through life, and they start to block us. And we have to, instead of being, stuck with that block and being like banging our heads against it, going, oh my gosh, I've got to push past it, to step back and go, okay, what's underneath this? What is that internal belief that is creating this? And that's when we get curious, and that's when we can start really shifting things.
Yeah, it's such powerful work, isn't it? And it's one of the I guess, modules that I've designed as part of one of my programs. It's called the belief deconstruction. And we literally look at what the belief is. Where did it come from? Where did we find proof to sustain this belief? Whose was it? Was it mom's, dad's, school teachers, sibling, friends? Like, if it wasn't ours, where did it even come from? What do we value so much that we're holding on to by sustaining this belief? And what would life be like if we start to change it? And then, what are the steps to move forward into actually changing it and creating a new belief system, and then proof to support that as well, because we're creatures of proof. And so it's such a powerful thing to do, and it can literally change your life. Like, it can change the whole trajectory of your life when you clear this shit out. You see things from a different perspective. You understand things on a new level. You have better relationships. You have better relationship with yourself. You're able to move from a place of, peace and love and vitality and excitement for life and passion, as opposed to dragging your feet and feeling stuck in, on that, the rat wheel, essentially, the hamster wheel going around and around again. What is it, Landy, that you would say to our listeners out there who are probably by now nodding their head going, oh my gosh, like, I need to start somewhere with this, or I need to dive a little bit deeper into this? What would you say to them?
The first thing is just start getting curious. Awareness is so huge. And so many times we're just not aware. And so when we start coming up against those blocks, and when you start feeling that anxiousness in your body, or the tightness, or the neck pain, that seems to be a big one lately, is people are complaining about neck pain. And really it's coming down to, there is some, resistance in their life. Let's dive into it. So sometimes you have that physical resistance. Sometimes it's more into that, I just feel blocked in what I'm doing. But get curious. start asking, like, step aside, look at it from a different angle. What is this? What could be underneath this? What needs to happen to create change? And that is such a powerful thing, because then it takes us out of like, oh my gosh, I can't get anywhere, to, ooh, I wonder what else could be there. And once we start bringing in that curiosity, that's when we can start making change. And then if you're like, oh yeah, there's something here, I want to dive deeper, then finding support. Because yes, we can do our own work. You can go through self-development books, absolutely. But it's going to be faster and easier if you're working with someone else, because they can see your shit where you're stuck in it. And it's be like, oh my gosh, like I was working with a coach and I had no idea that like this was my one train of thought. And she's like, what about this? And I'm like, oh, world opened. Oh my gosh, there's something on the right side. Sorry, you can hear doggies in the background. You know, there's like some big thing that's like, whoa, I never even thought about looking at it from that perspective. And then it's like, oh, okay, so what belief was I holding on that's not aligned with me now? And how can I shift that? And I always tell my clients, we have a garden. And this came from Emily Nagowski. And she talked about sexual beliefs, but I love it from everything. We have this garden and everyone plants things in our garden all through childhood and going into, you know, our teachers, our parents, if we're religious, into the religious beliefs, the media, everybody plants a belief in our garden. And then we get to be adults and we're living off other people's beliefs until we sit with our garden and say, oh, wait, I don't believe this. This doesn't align anymore. And, you know, and you look at it like, oh, you know, you plant a real garden. Somebody planted carrots. I don't love carrots, but they're growing and flourishing there. So let's take out the carrots and put in something that I absolutely do love. Let's take out those old, outdated beliefs and really tend to the garden, plant the seeds that I want to grow. And that's where we're going to start really changing our life. But we have to sit with that garden and say, what aligns to the life I want to create?
I love that so much. I love it. And it's such a beautiful way to start to view the world, you know, and everything is unfuckable. You know, everything that we've been through, every mindset, every, you know, belief system, you know, even trauma, you know,
yes,
we get to unfuck ourselves from the power it has had over us previously. And we can still have it there. We can still walk alongside it. We don't want to make any part of it wrong, and we can change.
Absolutely, we can change. We are so resilient as human beings. Our brains are incredibly resilient. Yes, we can go through horrific trauma and we can come out the other side without it creating debilitating effects. We can be, I'm resilient. I'm going to shift we get to choose how we walk forward from that. And that's our biggest power. We can't change what happens. That happened. It sucked. It was horrible. But we can change what we do from now on. Do we let it continue to keep us trapped and keep us down? Or do we decide, no, I'm going to really work through that. I'm going to shift and let go of whatever beliefs were planted at that point. And I'm going to move forward in a powerful way and become this new person. And the trauma is still there. It still happened, but it doesn't have to impact our day like it did before. And that's where we're incredible as humans, because we are resilient. Trauma happens, but so is resiliency. And we just get to choose where we want to go from here. Start right here. What's your next step?
I love it so much. I love it. Couple of questions for you. What is your one thing that gets you up in the morning? Like, what is it that helps you to spring out of bed and grab life by the ovaries?
Oh, I love that. There's just an excitement about life. I am a 5 a.m. type of person, but I get up at 5 a.m. because my kids are still asleep, and it's this beautiful, quiet time. And I love that silence, but the wonder of the world. And I get so excited about all of these little things. And, you know, looking at the sun, we have snow in Colorado here. So, you know, things are melting, the ice, all of that is just this curiosity. I think seeing it through a child's eyes is huge. And you can pick up on that excitement. So that's the biggest thing, is like, ooh, curiosity and wonder. What's going to happen today?
I love that so much. And Landy, what is the meaning of life to you?
Oh, I love that. The meaning of life is connection. I think we're here to really connect with others, to help other beings grow. I'm big into our soul's purpose. And, my existence here is to grow and change my soul and be a better, different person than I started out with. And I do that through connection.
I love that so much. That's so beautiful. Landy, how can people find you? How can people work with you, get in touch with you, and just soak up all of that deliciousness that you are?
Oh, thank you. It's landypeek.com. So LandyPeek.com. And that is where, website, you can reach me from there. I am on Instagram, but not very active. So there is some spurts of activity when I feel like it. But the landypeek.com is the main way to kind of get in touch. And then, really I offer free discovery calls. So it's a time for us to get together and chat and see if we're a good fit to work together. But for me to hear your story, to get some support, and to really just be able to connect, and coming back to that connection, connect with other human beings.
I love that. And we'll link to all of that in the show notes. Landy, thank you so much for being on the Enlighten podcast. It's been such an honor to have you here, sharing all of your stories and all of the work that you do. And I would love to have a chat to you further down the track as well, because I feel that there's so many different areas that we can dive into. And so a big thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No worries. Thanks, Landy. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlighten podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.